Welcome to Stay Curious, everybody. I'm your host, Mark Marquette. We're so glad you joined us for another episode. This is Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026, and the day after our moon rocket over here is going to be delayed. There we are, over there's our moon rocket. The beautiful moon over here, Carlton Bailey. What a shot he took the other night as moon rising over the Cape Kennedy and Cape Canaveral Island over there. And of course, so we'll talk a little bit about what you all know is that it's been delayed at least till March. A lot of hotels being canceled, a lot of trips and airplane tickets being canceled. People want to know if they can get their money back from Kennedy Space Center, all that sort of stuff. But Marty Winkle, my co-producer, is here. He's also badged out there. Maybe he's got something to add to it. We'll talk about three main things that were the issues last night, and I wonder why. And I will take that on tomorrow, as I will have a special prepared written PowerPoint presentation on the Artemis architecture, what we accomplished in a brief 11 years with NASA on two different periods during the Apollo and building the International Space Station, and what we've accomplished in 11 years of trying to build a moon ship to go to the moon. So you will not want to miss that tomorrow. And I'll probably have to put it's Mark's opinion up there, although you will agree with my opinion and learn some facts. But let's talk about one fact. We'll talk about another fact here in just a minute. But let everybody know this is our show today. We're going to talk about Artemis 2. We're going to talk about 3 shuttles in February, launched on February 3rd. Can't make that up, okay? In Black History Month, we're going to kick it off with 3 astronauts launched on February 3rd, 3 black astronauts. And then once again, this is why I love juxtaposing space history, because you can't make it up, Marty. Pick these 3 amazing missions launched, including one that has our new friend Jan Davis, who's going to be signing autographs on her book Saturday at our Space Memorabilia show at the Hyatt Place. So let's thank the Hyatt Place for all that they do. We've had 4 successful shuttle fests and a memorabilia show there in November. This is our new home for our memorabilia show. Thank you, Sarah Grinrod, and the staff there, being so accommodating and also affordable. This is right on Route 1, 5 miles from our museum, this place is. There is the Space Memorabilia Show advertisement there, like they do in Europe. They repeat stuff all the time. These are quads I made to cut up and leaflet the community with. Hopefully get that done in a day or two. And I just thought of something I need to do for that I forgot, Marty. So, oh my gosh. And that is my life, and happily so. Is Our museum is in big demand, and as the director and face of the museum, I am constantly busy, gleefully doing what I love. Thank you, Hyatt Place. Here is Jan, the beautiful Jan Davis there. That's her first book about she and her Air Force father. She wrote another follow-up book. He was a prisoner of war. Some real heart-wrenching stories in there from Jan Davis, Air Force lady and 3-time space flyer. And you will want to greet her books only. If you're local, don't bring a picture to autograph or a shuttle model. We just want books only. So thank you for respecting that. Shuttles of the month of February we're going to talk about. All right, those 3, 41B, 60, that has Jan on board on her first of 2 flights, and 63C. 63C, all outstanding missions. I'm not going to, we'll tease you later about that. There's our beautiful front. The museum constantly changing. We've actually spruced it up a little bit more. Of all the plants, Marty, I don't care for these plants in the front. And we've had 3 days of 0 temperatures, freezing temperatures, not 0, but it got down to 29 last night where I live. And these plants didn't die, and I wish they would have. Of all the plants we had killed around the property, because I want to put some pretty flowers in there that bloom during the summer. Black History Month is when America celebrates our African American heritage, so important and such a vital chapter from slavery to space workers. Okay, from slave ships to spaceships, as my African American friend Art Edwards' book says, Marty. And we'll get Art on this week. In fact, I'll probably call Art afterwards here. We've been working on trying to get publicity of his book out, but there's no joke. That is the seriousness. From slave ships to spaceships is what our African American friends that have worked for NASA and the contractors legacy that they have. Okay, I might take a few comments and questions and so forth, but I got to say this, CB. My friend Carlton Bailey did some of the best photography I've seen from him in a while on the Artemis mission. This is one of the most beautiful reflections of any rocket, isn't it, Marty? There, and just to back up that I know what I'm talking about, it ended up on the. Oh, I don't have it there. Oh man, I thought I had the picture, Carlton, of you. Well, that's the inside page of the U.S. Aviation Week in Space Technology. Used it there, crediting him. And it's this image reflected there, and it says that man returns to the moon to orbit around the moon. It doesn't say orbit. It says to make a pass behind the moon, all right, on there. I meant to put the whole cover up there, but I think Carlton says like his 17th cover for this magazine. So that bought him some cat food and squirrel food there for a week or so, I hope, buddy. But to look at this beautiful backdrop here, let's just think a moment, and I'm going to give you a whole belly full of it tomorrow. All right. The Orion spacecraft has been in development 13 years, all right? It's been in development. I think the contract was even let out 15 years ago. It has never flown with a crew on it, and out the pad, the hatch was leaking. The seal didn't have spacecraft integrity on the seal out there. Now, Marty, how in the world would they could take that out to space, out to the launch pad from the VAB without knowing the seal is compromised? I know you don't have the answer to that. I'm just being facetious there. Number two, they had the same leak about in this area up here, okay, of fueling the liquid hydrogen. A problem that they've had for over 8 years. I know this from a fact because I have a friend that is a configuration management person. This woman I knew 8 years ago complained to me that she was out in a trailer instead of inside the property doing her job with the pieces and parts that a configuration management person makes sure is accurate, because they were working on the LOX, liquid oxygen or liquid hydrogen, I forget which one, connector, and that the connector wasn't working right. And after 2 months of her complaining that they still haven't fixed it, I want to go inside. The trailer's hot and everything. I said, why don't they ask shuttle people about this? And because engineers don't talk to shuttle people. But finally, she said they fixed it. I get to go back into the building, and ONC or wherever she worked. And I said, well, who'd they talk to fix it? Shuttle worker, okay, to fix it. And it's sad that the legacy engineers are not talked to about problems today. Here's the same problem again with a connecting fitting, something like that going wrong. This is elementary rocket science 101 that we shouldn't have to worry about when we take a $1 billion rocket and spacecraft out to the pad on a $1 billion crawler, by the way. Go ahead, Marty. He's got a question or comment, and I'll bring my YouTube channel up here for you fine folks today.
No, Mark, I have a comment on what you said. Some things you just can't test before you get out to the pad. There's no way of loading hydrogen, in the ONC or any other building. So you're not going to find those kind of leaks, those hydrogen leaks, until you get out to the pad, until you start to do the loading.
Okay, but how about the leak in the hatch of the Orion?
I don't know anything about
Yeah,
that.
you don't know anything about that, but that's true. I've got a few deep throats out there, but that was talked about even on Space Hipsters. Somebody did a diagram of the hatch to show, what could be the problem and so forth.
But how about the leak in the hatch?
No, I'm with you there. That's why you have a wet dress rehearsal. That's why any quality thing has a rehearsal. Okay, you want to make sure you're not surprised by anything. So Carlton's saying thanks for the kudos. He's humbled. Thank you. Uh, and do appreciate you, Carlton. 13 Aviation Week covers in 5 decades, as you all are reading there. Stangy hadn't heard about the hatch issue. Okay. Um, there could be some cold weather problems out there for sure. Okay. But then, when you think of that, you're going like, well, it is going to outer space, okay, where it's 200 below zero on one side of the spacecraft and 200 above on the other, and that's why they do a barbecue roll. So, I don't buy the weather thing, okay, but and the third thing was communications problems they had. And the fourth thing was some software anomalies that sprung up. Again, that's why you do the tests. So the launch team makes sure that the software is talking correctly to the hardware. And push back till March and the March dates. These dates are dictated, by the way, if we're going to loop behind the moon, and that's what I wanted to point out. I was at Spacecom for 3 days. Marty, 1 in 5 people I talked to, 2 in 10, okay, 4 in 20, even knew the other people knew that we were just going to do a loop behind the moon, going 5,000 miles beyond the moon, further than any human's ever gone, which is now only about 250 miles, I think. Apollo 13 may have done that, and that is what the record they're breaking. And the moon's going to be the size of a basketball at arm's length, NASA says. Okay. I get that in my telescope in my backyard. Okay. But the phase of the moon is either going to be a quarter. See, they were going to launch, and then they have to see some of the last quarter moon, where you just see about half of the moon on the left side. But on the back side of the moon, where they're going to see it, it'll be illuminated as a quarter phase back there. So that's why all these are happening at night, is that they have to have the phase of the moon be on our side at least a quarter, last quarter or first quarter. So this is, I'm going to take it on tomorrow, show you the exact trajectory, show you why this has nothing to do with the architecture of landing on the moon with Artemis 3. And I'm going to keep my fingers and toes crossed for the safety of these 4 wonderful, talented astronauts, because I advocate that this should be done in Earth orbit, testing the Orion systems for 10 days. They're scheduled to last 20 some days, okay? So what other comments we got about that?
Carlton makes a comment. He says they had a countdown test in the VAB with the crew. Wouldn't it have had to seal in there? Well, I don't know the exact answer to that, but my comment is that something can fail at any time. You turn your TV on and it's working, all of a sudden it's not working. Or
Yeah.
your car's running and your car stops.
Yeah, good point.
Things happen, And I'm not trying to justify the problems they're having, but stuff happens at times.
Exactly. And we've had other delays, in Apollo and Shuttle. Hey, how about one woodpecker creating millions of dollars of delays there on STS-70, Don Thomas's famous woodpecker flight. So no, I if I'm being a little too harsh, it's because it's taken so doggone long between Artemis launches. The last one was in November 2022. Okay, 3 years, November, December, January, 3 years, 3 months ago was the last Artemis launch. And my point is, Marty and his Grumman colleagues and the Apollo colleagues of Rockwell and all the other great companies of Apollo, they launched 11 crewed flights from October 1968 to December 1972. That is 4 years and 3 months, all right? So the cadence of those 11 launches, Marty, you were processing through how many? Were you processing 2 or even 3 LEMs at the same time?
Well, I wasn't supporting all three at the same time, but two were being in process all the time
Yeah.
at KSC. Yeah.
And 24 humans gone to the moon in a 4 year span. Okay, let's put it that way. All right, because you had Apollo 8 after 7, and then 9. So even less time if you want to look at it that way, months wise. And we've not sent another person back in 50 some years, 53 years, and Apollo 14 is headed to the moon right now. And I'm going to start posting stuff about it, and we're going to, with glee, block a lot of hoaxers. I love doing that. And I've got Pat Adkins. He's helping me do that, too. Hope you're watching, Pat. All right. Yes,
Just
Marty.
one more comment. One thing we got to think about also are the millions of parts and the millions of things that can go wrong. I'm not saying that, I agree, it is taking much too much time. But again, things happen, and anything can go wrong. I know I sound like I'm trying to justify the problems, but just it's reality. There are millions of parts on that vehicle.
I agree. No doubt about that. That even makes it even sweeter to look back 50 years ago technology, Marty. And you never pulled they pulled one back when the 16, they pulled one back to the VAB when the hypergolic leak of the famous 16 incident. Am I right? You never had to pull one back. You could repair on a pad. So I don't know if you know, because I don't. I've been very busy and haven't caught up with anything except phone calls from my deep throats out there that and by the way, I refer to Deep Throat from the Watergate era for these you too young to remember the Watergate of President Nixon's resignation. There were some people that told Washington Times reporters Woodward and Bernstein things confidentially. I don't know if they have to pull it back into the pad. I don't think they did last time for the hydrogen leak. I think it was a hurricane that they pulled it in for. But I don't like the cadence. I don't like people working 3 years between launches and thinking this is acceptable. And I will have a very structured program about that tomorrow so I don't get too far into the weeds. So let's get out of the Artemis situation. And it's going to be till March, unfortunately, all of you girls and boys that wanted to come and bathe in the sun. But that's that's our wheelhouse of our tourism industry going on too. So I was told 13 million people were coming in this weekend into Brevard County, Marty, for the launch. So and some will come anyway. All right. Thank you, Carlton Bailey. Really good work. Appreciate it, buddy. And keep up those skills. It's hard. This is not an easy thing to do. And what makes this picture really good is he balanced the moon's brightness area, the highlands, and the dark areas are lunar lava lakes and seas that are frozen. Okay. And he balanced the Artemis and the moon's surface just perfectly in this. You don't want the moon, when you take a photograph, look like you're holding a flashlight. All right, on this date in space history in 1966, we had a big shock where the first time Russia a spacecraft was soft landed on the moon. All right. And soft landed is in quotes. Okay. This was not our surveyor Vernier engine slowing it down to a nice little, maybe 5 mile an hour landing. No, this was a ball called Luna 9. Okay. That was actually a ball that may have bounced a couple times. And then when it stopped, it was weighted so that the bottom would roll to the bottom, and then these pedals came out. See how the pedals in the bottom? This is the rocket stage in the back. That's what actually was the rocket that slowed the descent down, and then the Luna 9 ball popped off at the last minute, last second actually, and bounced and rolled a few times. Then the pedals opened up to stabilize it. Up popped a camera and antenna for communication, and for the first time, the world saw pictures of the. Well, I got that out of whack there. World saw pictures of the moon. Okay, from the surface of the moon. The first images. These are a couple or three panoramas that were stitched together. You can see it up there. But this was front page of the New York Times and every newspaper in America. Russia lands on the moon. Here's the first pictures. All right. Now, this thing was only up about 2 feet tall, if that, above the surface. So it's looking at not very big rocks in the foreground all the way out to the undulating plains of the lunar Maria. It actually landed in a smooth area called MarQ. I could show you in this picture right when of our astronauts here. There. Go here. The upper right-hand corner. I'm going to do it this way. Let's see if I can do it this way. Yeah, I can. MarQ is right here. This little oval right there. That is the Sea of Crisis. And that is where Russia landed 3 different rovers. One rover and two landers, but the first one crashed right there. Okay, MarQ. Now you know when you look at the moon. And so that was a big deal and quite a shock at the time that they'd beaten us to the surface of the moon. Well, what we're going to talk about that's out of whack here is Black History Month. As you see, obviously, we have Ron McNair, Guy Bluford, and Frederick Gregory there, the first 3 African-American astronauts chosen for the Corps. They got the NASA worm logo on their shoulders there. Guy Bluford was the first one to fly. I believe he flew 4 times as a mission specialist. Ron McNair flew on the mission that we're going to talk about today and lost his life in the Challenger accident. And then Fred Gregory, what a great guy he is. Is Fred a Marine?
I think so.
Yeah, I think he's a Marine. We'll talk about. I'm going to talk about Fred today. No, we're going to talk about Bolden. We're going to talk about Bolden on one of the missions today. So, and remind you, Apollo 14 is on the way to the moon. One of the most beautiful, spectacular launches of the Apollo launches. This returned America back to the moon after the successful failure, we call it, of Apollo 13. And we'll be talking about that as the landing is on February 5th, on coming up here on Thursday. Shuttles of the month of February. We have got 11 launches. All 5 orbiters went to space. OV-102 Challenger and OV-099 Columbia each went once. You always guess that Discovery's the workhorse because it had the most flights of the 135 with 39. It had 4. Atlantis 3 and OV-105, the newest one, had 3 in the month of February there. We're going to talk about the first 3. So let's break into my new book here. I got a new mission book, okay? And Fred Gregory's an Air Force guy. So don't lose your mind that I got that wrong. There we go. Tom Celentano jumped on that for us there. And we got C2 Cubing on there. Thank you for watching today. And Steve Jokums, no Bucks, no Buck Rogers. Right. And you're right, Steve. Without the Apollo level funding, the shuttle got shorted. Artemis is worse than that. And my final commentary is I saw a crawl where we're giving $14.7 billion to the Ukraine. I'm not even sure where it was going. Military funds to another country in the tune of 14.7 billion. Folks, that's half of NASA's budget annually. Why can't the Congress see the merits of space that has changed our world and start giving some serious money that we need to fulfill these dreams of mankind, create permanent settlements, on the moon and eventually get off this planet with a sustainable Martian basis. So, thank you. All right, Mission Art. Ooh, new book I found here by Luke Price. Uh, and let's kick it off with our first patch out of this book. You know, I love doing that. We're seeing the launches and the crew there out of sequence. The 41B, and once again, the 4 means fiscal year 1984, though it was launched in February 84, fiscal year 1984. The B is ABCD. 41 means 4 is fiscal year 84. 1 is launched from Kennedy Space Center. 2 would have been Vandenberg that they never did. And then B is like ABCD in the chronology manifest, and these all got messed up too. There was never an A, a 41A, to my knowledge, unless I turn the page and I'm corrected. No, there was C and D and G, and then they went to 51A. The 41B mission patch was designed by the great artist Robert McCall. Here, Challenger is pictured in the center with its landing gear deployed. In the right-hand circle is an illustration of an astronaut performing the first untethered extravehicular activity in the Manned Maneuvering Unit, called the MMU. The left-hand circle shows a satellite being deployed with its Payload Assist Module, or called PAM, engine firing to propel it into orbit. The PAM was just a solid rocket motor put on the bottom of satellites. Bruce McCandless made the first untethered EVA using the MMU jetpack. Robert Stewart is the second guy to do it, and nobody remembers him. Okay. Along this series of experiments, 2 communication satellites deployed. There is the crew in space, led by down at the bottom here, Apollo-Soyuz test project pilot, Vance Brand. Vance is 93 years old. Okay, and Hoot Gibson, pilot on his first mission. Where's my cheat sheet here? Let's just talk about it like it is. McCandless will become the first human satellite. Ron McNair handled the manipulator arm. Okay, and that's the 5 of them on there. Okay, and this was in February 1984. 84. 42 years ago. Wow. There's the launch at T-minus 9 seconds out there. Okay. Celebrating the 25th anniversary of the moon landing, it looks like. Beautiful shot there by Tom Usiak, or Mark, but that's a square Hasselblad format there, folks, that you want to enjoy. And there's the tethered spacewalk there. Okay. Bruce McCandless all the way out there. Okay. Then Robert Stewart did it next. So no one ever remembers the second person to do anything. So, of course, Charles Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic, first person to do that solo. Who was the second person to do it solo? Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Well, it'd be 5 years later, and that would be Amelia Earhart, the great aviatrix. Okay. So they both did it for money, by the way. There was a big cash bucket of gold at the rainbow, end of the rainbow there, to the tune of like $10,000 in 1920s kind of money. So, yeah, NASA's 25th anniversary, Jokums is correct to me. I said Apollo, I meant to say NASA. No teleprompter here, folks. Extemporaneous as can be. All right. This is the first landing at Kennedy Space Center. All right, was 41B. Look at that mist coming off there. That had to be a sight, almost 200 miles an hour, like a sports car down a straightaway. And so what was the time of the landing? Does this tell me? Nope, the other one does. So And here was the astronauts talking out at what was the rocket garden out at Kennedy Space Center at the time in 1984. Many of you remember that, how it looked like that. I think I made my first trip out there before then. And now where those rockets are is where we walk in, Marty. You walk in there 4 or 5 times a week sometimes out there. So that's where the entrance is. All right, Black History Month. Let's feature Ron McNair just for a minute on this flight. Ron McNair was born in Lake City, South Carolina on January 28th, 1986. I mean, he died, of course. I'm sorry. He was born October 21st, 1950. He was 36 when he died in the Challenger tragedy. A famous story about Ron is he refused to leave the segregated Lake County, South Carolina Public Library without being allowed to check out his books. Okay, in 1959, he was 9 years old. The police were called, his mother was called, and the police just kind of said, why don't you just let the kid borrow the books? And so he got the books from the library as a black boy, which was not allowed. The building is now named after him. The library at the time is the building that housed the library at the time is now named after him. In his children's book, Ron's Big Mission, it was fictionalized. And his brother Carl wrote his official biography in the spirit of Ronald E. McNair, an astronaut and American hero. Valedictorian at Carver High School. So MIT graduate, North Carolina Business College, and he had almost 8 days. He had 8 days in space with this crew here. Played saxophone, wanted to record some music in space. I heard a story that, it was always thought that he was going to record a cassette with his saxophone in space on Challenger. And it was told to me that Dick Scobie nixed that. He didn't want him to take his saxophone with him. They had enough going on with the teacher in space stuff. You heard that too, Marty, I think. Did you, in the circles I was at the other night? I think that came out in the Apollo 1. We were talking about that, the Apollo 1 documentary. Could be true, maybe it's not true, but God bless you, Ron McNair, forever remembered, and died too young and would have been definitely 3 or 4 flights after this one. So, okay, let's go to the next shuttle launched in the month of, on the day of February 3rd, and that's STS-60. Okay, launched on 1994, 10 years later. It signaled the beginning of a new era with the U.S.-Russian cooperation in human spaceflight. Here's what the patch says. In a configuration that resembles the open wings of an eagle, the patch shows the 2 national flags of America and Russia proudly displayed together in a symbolic show of unity between the 2 space agencies. The names of the 6 crew members encircle the design, each with a star next to their name. Discovery is illustrated in orbit. Payload bay doors open wide, revealing the Space Hab 2 science facility towards the front and the 100th getaway special payload at the back. Those getaway specials were sort of a pay for play, and you could be a high school student and get a payload up to space rather inexpensively. The remote manipulator arm system can be seen preparing to deploy the Wake Shield facility. That's something we ought to talk about one day, is this Wake Shield in space created a vacuum behind it that was pretty interesting. Space Hab 2 was the second flight for Space Hab. A pressurized module, 12 experiments. This was a McDonald Space Hab versus Space Lab that was owned by NASA and filled the whole cargo bay. Space Hab was just in the back. Actually, they have it up front here. Right in the front up there. It wasn't in the back, it was in the front. And there's the crew in space there. You've got Charlie Bolden's the commander in the middle. We'll talk about Charlie in a minute. This is his fourth of 4 flights. Pilot Ken Reitler was on his second and last, okay. Did not want to, he didn't stick around to be a commander. Jan Davis was on her second of 3. Ron Sega on his first of 2. Ron's to the upper left there. And Franklin Chang Diaz, his fourth of 7 flights, record setting 4 flights with him, tied with Jerry Ross. And Krikalev on his third of 6 space flights. But this was the first time that a Russian had flown to space, okay? And our friend Jan Davis, who was so beautifully eloquent at our astronaut memorial, shared that with us there. And I got some pictures of Jan. Yeah, I do. But we're going to talk about Charlie here for a minute for our Black History Month. Charles Frank Bolden Jr. was born August 19th, 1946 in Columbia, South Carolina. A major general in the Marines, the Vietnam veteran, became an astronaut in 1981, piloting 2 space shuttle missions and a commander of 2. In May of 2009, President Barack Obama announced the nomination of Bolden as NASA administrator, the first African American to head the agency on a permanent basis. In fact, Fred Gregory was an interim administrator during the transition of one of the administrations. Bolden helped transform Kennedy Space Center into a private entrepreneurial cooperative with the government. Of course, he was working heavily with Bob Cabana, Kennedy Space Center director, and his assistant Janet Petro. And Cabana and Petro really get the yeoman's work of what's going on today, of outlining that back 18 years ago even. So, and what any tidbits? So I've seen some paraphernalia of his at really beautiful Columbia Museum there. Of course, big Marine guy. Let's see here. He, of course, is still a space advocate. He advocated landing on Mars. He said, let's have a personal thing. He lives in Houston, couple children. He says, quote, the universe is a big place. I'm a practicing Christian, so in my faith I learn about omnipotent, omnipresent God, which means he's everywhere. He's all-knowing. He does everything. And I just cannot bring my little pea brain to believe that a God like that would pick one planet out of one of millions of suns and say that that's the only place in the vast universe I'm going to put any kind of life. And so the problem is I haven't been far enough away, okay, from the Earth's surface. So, never met him. Would love to spend some time with Charlie Bolden. Okay, well, we did kind of meet him at the, we saw him buy a $2,200 martini at the astronaut cocktail challenge, but that's not meeting him. That's just hanging out with him in a big party. So, Jan Davis, there's the beautiful Jan Davis talking out the astronaut encounter, and she does an excellent talk. There she is with her book again. And she was part of this flight, and another plug to come see her. Say hi to her, get your picture made with her. She's going to autograph books only this Saturday at the Hyatt Place Hotel, our sponsor for today. Tom Celentano says STS-60 stands out to me because it launched at 7:10 a.m. and none of the broadcast networks bothered to show it live during the morning shows. Wow, that's interesting. And Tommy Usak says Mark photographed the landing that we saw of 41B there. That was outstanding, Mark. And Ophelia, bonjour to you, 5,000 miles away. By the way, I say that's how, France is as close as where we're at now that Artemis is getting to the moon. Guess what else was 5,000 miles away behind us, Marty, to the west? Hawaii. So we're going by Hawaii right now, folks. 5,000 miles away. All right, I'm being a little too silly about something that is serious, and I'm be serious about it tomorrow. There's Jen up there talking. She's got a women's outfit. I forget the name of that, and I want to look that up and help promote that for her. And there's the crew going out to face the press after landed in their T-38s out there. And there's the beautiful launch. Love those contrails with those stinky SRBs headed up to all that power. And there's the liftoff. UCX Brothers work there. So, all right, one more shuttle launched on February 3rd. Can you believe that? All right, this one was launched in 1995. All right, so we have February 3rd, 84 with 41B. Then 1994 on the February 3rd, STS-60. Then the next year on February 3rd in 1995, STS-63. And this is a famous mission where they flew by the Mir space station. They didn't dare try to dock with it yet because they weren't sure of even electrical discharges between the two spacecraft and stuff like that. The STS-63 crew patch illustrates Discovery maneuvering to perform the first rendezvous with Russia's Mir space station as part of the joint U.S.-Russian shuttle Mir program that we are talking about at Shuttlefest. All right, NASA at Star City. All right, and we're going to have some astronauts that work Star City and maybe even this mission there. The name Mir, which translates to peace, is written in red Cyrillic letters on the side of the space station. As the Discovery approaches while orbiting Earth, the Space Hab 3 pressurized science module can be seen in the front of the payload bay, along with the Spartan 204 free-flying payload that analyzed cosmic dust clouds. The 6 solar flares and 3 white stars represent the mission's designated number 63. I did not know that. So you got 6 spikes over here on the sun and 3 on the right. That's 63. I kind of thought that might represent the cosmonauts or something, but it doesn't. The crew names circle the patch in blue and gold, recalling the military backgrounds of Commander James Weatherby, Navy, and pilot Eileen Collins, U.S. Air Force. The national flags of the USA and Russia sit side by side at the bottom of the insignia as a sign of the cooperation of the two nations on this historic rendezvous in space. And so that was Eileen Collins' shining moment there, all right? There is Discovery in a cool shot that we love showing different shots from time to time. It is on the pad. You photographers know exactly where that tripod is. The launch, see that? Same situation there, same camera, okay? And then there they are on board, okay? The crew includes Jim Weatherby, commander. Let's see, how many flights is that for Jim? Got my notes here. Weatherby, 3rd of 6 flights. He was once a pilot and 5 times a commander. All right. And Eileen Collins, 1st of 4 flights, called the Near Mir mission. Michael Full, 3rd of 6 flights. Where's that British dual citizen American? He's lower right-hand corner there. African-American Bernard Harris, his 2nd and last flight. He was the first African-American to do a spacewalk on this mission. And Janice Voss, her 2nd of 5 flights. In the upper left-hand corner is Janice. Lost her life tragically to breast cancer. And the second Russian to fly inside a shuttle, Vladimir Titov, his 3rd of 4th flights there off of Weatherby's shoulder there. And, of course, the beautiful Eileen Collins. We have her handprints in our women's gallery where 83 women who orbited the Earth are featured, along with our description of the suborbital Karmanauts. I'll bring a slide for that later. what a wonderful lady she is. We just all engaged with her, Marty, aren't we? And you would think this woman was selling Avon. I mean, an Avon women are wonderful women, meaning she's so unpretentious, happy. She's the last one to leave a book signing. Okay, this is her buddy and ours.
Jonathan Ward.
Jonathan, we had Jonathan Ward. All right. And Jonathan also wrote Mike Linebox, Bringing Columbia Home, and then did this book with Eileen. They spent hundreds of hours on the phone talking to each other. And so, Eileen, we love you. You're a great person, and we can't wait to have you back. Of course, there's a documentary of her called Space Woman that we saw one of the premiere. Haviland is one of the directors on this, and I enjoyed it. She came from the wrong side of the tracks, okay, in Elmira, New York, in a hard scrabble world there with an alcoholic dad and a mother that tried to keep the family together. Quite an amazing story. And a lot of it is told over a kitchen table talking to her sister who lives in Orlando. So, and let's go to Bernard Harris here to celebrate Black History Month. Bernard Harris was born in Temple, Texas. Okay, so we've got South Carolina with Ron McNair. We've got Columbia, South Carolina with Bolden, and Temple, Texas. Bernard Harris, born June 26, 1956. So he'll be celebrating his, he'll be celebrating Big 7-0 there, Bernard, coming up here for you, buddy. So we'll make sure we don't forget that. Parents divorced when he was 6 years old. And seeing his father struggle, who only had a 10th grade education, inspired Harris to pursue a STEM education, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. He became interested in becoming an astronaut watching the Apollo 11 mission on the moon at age 13. Talked to him several times. He was last year's inductee in the Astronaut Hall of Fame. That was a big deal for him, had all of his family there, daughters. I really got to kind of hang out with him a little bit for an afternoon. First African American to walk in space, while Michael Foale became the first British-born spacewalker. Okay, and he has the Harris Foundation in Houston. There he is in his EVA garb. A nonprofit organization whose stated mission is to, quote, invest in the community-based initiatives to support education, health, and wealth. The Harris Foundation supports programs that empower individuals, and in particular, minorities and other economically challenged and socially disadvantaged groups, to recognize their potential and realize their dreams. So good for you, Bernard Harris, and I enjoyed chit-chatting with you at the Astronaut Memorial. He was a lot of fun, fun family. He was on cloud nine, as who wouldn't be? He's got how many hours in space? He's got 18 days in space, 19 days in space. So good for him. Still giving it away. There's our shuttles of the month of February. All right, we've got 8 more to talk about this month, and you know I'm going to talk about them because that's what we do here on Stay Curious, is keep the shuttle era alive. A comment to me was made by one of the NASA leaders a few years ago that said, Mark, I like what you're doing about the shuttles of the month because my fear is that when there's no International Space Station orbiting the Earth, people will forget about the shuttle era. But they're never going to forget Apollo because there's always going to be a moon up there in the sky. I don't know if he's got a good point or not, but we'll soon find out when that ISS plunges into the Indian Ocean. And we're going to keep people's dreams alive with the accomplishments of the shuttle. Right, Dave Stange and RG Jubilee, thanks for watching today. Steve Jokums, Doug Forrest, Mitch Rothman's watching. And I hope you're doing okay, Mitch. We want to talk to you. Cliff Watson, Mostly Parked. Cliffy, hope you're doing well down in Pomona, Australia. Mostly Parked is watching today. Tom Musiak, Robert Law, Tom Celentano, C.T. Cubing watching today. Thank you. Mark Thel, Ophelia Sotterill, and George and Bonnie Smitty. Marty's
Niece and nephew.
niece and nephew. There you go. Niece and nephew who've been here in the museum. I keep wanting to say cousins, so I didn't say that on there. So Steve says that Dr. Harris's sister-in-law was our guide for the Level 9 tour of Johnson Space Center back in 2018. That guy's got some memory, doesn't he? Good for you, Steve. Okay, but I'll bet he takes notes of some of that stuff. I respect that a lot. There's your VAB pass right there, brother. Let's go and check it out today. All right. Well, thank you all for watching. Tomorrow I've got a luncheon to attend, and then I'll slide into this seat and have a pretty canned program about Artemis and NASA. Okay. The old days, the good old days, and NASA today with Artemis. A nice contrast to at least make a point about this cadence of Artemis 2 and 3 being 3 years apart is ridiculous, okay? And we're never going to beat China with this kind of attitude and this poor reservoir of money that they're using for us. So hope I teased you enough to come back tomorrow. As I'm Mark Marquette, and I hope you want to come back tomorrow and see what Marty and I've cooked up, because what we've cooked up will be something exciting for us all to bridge the space between us. Have a good night. See you tomorrow.